Hi everyone, welcome back to the Property Finance Podcast, and as you will see today I am recording from the car. I want to caveat this and say I absolutely despise car podcasts, not podcasts about cars but podcasts from cars, not least because I'm on a busy road and there's lots of cars going by, but I just think they look tacky and crap, and unfortunately we are so busy at the minute that literally this is Tuesday night. Drop the kids off for trampolining, and yeah, I'm currently sat outside trampolining, and all of a sudden realised I have to issue a podcast tomorrow. So yeah, here we are. This is as has been the case the last couple of weeks, a very impromptu, really off the cuff podcast, and I'm actually quite enjoying these off the cuff podcasts because not only are they sort of one-take wonders, but a lot of it is raw. This is what's going on this week. This is what we're literally dealing with. And I'll call it in the trenches. It's not quite in the trenches, but like what we're going through on a weekly basis. So this week's seen a lot of dev loans, a lot of supported living mortgages as well. That seems to be one of the big things that we're seeing at the moment as well. So a lot of social housing, supported living, very much flavour of the month at the moment, and has been for some time. A lot of deving, a lot of bridge. Seen quite a bit of dev exit stuff at the minute as well, for obvious reasons. People are struggling to sell, so obviously the first thing they're looking at doing is refinancing. Seeing a lot of HMO mortgages coming up at the moment as well. Trying to think what else we've had. We've had quite a few portfolio bits, but dev is very much back as being kind of something that a lot of people are going for. So whether that's refurbs, commercial conversions, or full-blown new build, we're seeing a whole mixed bag at the moment. I'd say we're seeing quite a bit of actual new build at the moment as well, but we kind of specialise in that, so we've kind of niched ourselves into that as well. A lot of first-time developers, that kind of thing as well. So that's where we're sort of sitting at the minute. Interest rates have come down slightly this week as well. Next week is the Bank of England next meeting. I think we're probably going to see a hold. I don't think we're going to see an increase. I don't think it's going to see a decrease. So I think we're going to see a flat hold. So that's the 18th of June. Today's the 9th. So that'll be a week on, well, at the point of you guys listening to this, a week tomorrow. So I think we'll probably see a hold on that. Very difficult to know what they're going to do sort of specifically, but I think that's probably where we're going to be. But we've seen kind of across the board, like today, for example, so Castle Trust have just dropped their interest rates by a sort of 0.1, which isn't a huge decrease, but when you're going from sort of 6.04 to 5.94, it's the difference between being in the sixes and being in the fives. And on big loans, obviously, it does make a difference every year as well in terms of that cash flow. So, yeah, we're seeing some decent movement there. We've also seen Lendco have dropped theirs by about 0.25% as well. So on HMOs, we're at kind of 4.29 on commercial HMOs at the minute, which is, I think, market leading. So yeah, very much they are the ones to go to if you're sort of looking at commercial HMOs. They've done some really, really good valuations for us recently as well. So yeah, very much kind of pumping as much as we can to them. So let's get into it. So today's podcast is all about kind of busting some of the myths that we've heard recently. So cover off a few of them now, probably do a few more next week. So I'm going to cover off kind of 3 or 4, just a quick 10-15 minute podcast, just really to get rid of some of the misinformation that you see out there, because I've always been a massive advocate for the right information being out there. And I think the problem is there's so many training courses, so many trainers, so many wannabe trainers, so many property investors turned brokers who aren't necessarily putting out the right information. So yeah, just wanted to bust a couple of myths very quickly. So I made a couple of notes. So the first one that I want to talk about is 100% loan to cost dev finance. Now, this one really, really grinds my gears, because there is a lot of stuff out there at the minute which I would actually put down as false advertising. And what happens is brokers, or even just, they're not even brokers, they're people who realistically come through and they go, right, we need to gather up as much of a database as possible. So we're going to put a Facebook ad out and we're going to say that we can do 100% financing, and we're going to say we can do 100% loan to cost. But actually, realistically, what happens is you put all your details in there, They then ring you up, you then go through the deal with them, and they say, well, actually, the only way we can do 100% loan to cost on that is if you put in additional security. Well, that's not 100% loan to cost. Or, well, it is in the sense of the lender can get to 100% loan to cost, but it's false advertising in the sense of they are advertising that they can do 100% finance and not being clear that you need to put extra property into that deal. So if you ever see anyone offering 100% finance, go into it with some trepidation, because realistically you are going to have to put in additional property or massive profit share, so maybe 60-40, and still pay interest on top of that as well. You're going to have to find deals that are doing realistically 25% profit on GDV post financing costs for it even to stack, which those deals just don't exist in the current market. So if anyone's putting out there that they can do 100% finance, it's complete and utter nonsense, because it just doesn't exist unless you are ticking some very, very specific boxes, or if you've got shed loads of equity in your properties. Now, the caveat to that is that if you're doing things like deferred payment, vendor finance, that kind of thing, they are very, very tricky strategies to put in place, structures to put in place, and although the lenders can get pretty close, chances are they're still not going to cover things like stamp duty, legal fees, valuations, everything else. So I am always very conscious that I do not advertise that we do 100% loan to cost, because we don't. We don't cover 100% of everything. We can potentially cover 100% of purchase price and 100% of build, but we can't cover stamp duty, legals. We can't cover VAT unless we do a separate VAT bridge, but realistically that doesn't stack up in most deals. So I'm always very conscious that I don't put out that we can do 100% loan to cost, because we just can't cover things like stamp is the biggest one. If you're doing a multi-million pound purchase, your stamp duty bill is going to be significant. So we're always really, really conscious that we don't advertise that. So that's the first one that really, really does wind me up, and it is just essentially a marketing ploy to get people into a newsletter. The second one that I want to talk about is the rate. So what I mean by that is the rate is not the most important thing. So when you look at a development finance deal, when you look at a bridging finance deal, the rate is not the most important thing. Now, it's very easy to get suckered into 0.55% a month interest costs, compared to a 1%. You're always going to go for the 0.55. Of course you are. But when you start digging into it more, there might be fees, there might be everything else. But the most important thing when it comes to any of this, when it comes to any kind of finance, is how does that lender perform when it hits the fan? Because it will do, inevitably, in the current market. There's COVID, there's been the Iranian war, or still is the Iranian war, there's been the Ukrainian war, there's been war after war after war. The economy is getting decimated. You are never, ever going to get out of a finance deal on time. Something will happen. It inevitably will happen. It'll be out of your control. It'll be something that you cannot get around. So whether it be that the market slows down and your sales slow down, whether it be that your contractor all of a sudden jumps the cost up by 10%, there are things that you just cannot get around. So what I would say with that is you need to be really conscious as to how those lenders act when it hits the fan. Because if they're going to back you, support you, work with you, get things over the line, then realistically, does it matter what you pay as an interest cost? No, probably not. Because you want to know that you are safe and protected and everything else. Some people, don't get me wrong, they're only ever going to want the cheapest deal. But those are the people who are also going to really struggle when things get rough. And the sun has now just decided to hit me in the weirdest position. Anyway, so it really can't just be about that interest rate. You need to be really conscious as to everything else that's involved in that deal. Without a shadow of a doubt, those are the things that you need to be looking at, is how are they going to deal with things when things go wrong. And we've got one at the moment where it's the one and only one that I've ever had go wrong. And it wasn't the developer's sort of fault. So what happened is one of the directors basically went away with a load of the money. That is not something you can predict. That is not something that you are ever going to be able to, when you sit down and look at a deal, go, one of the directors is going to run off with 300 grand. You can't predict that, because if you were able to predict that, you wouldn't do the deal. So what's happened on that one is we've got two lenders who have now gone into default. One of whom has appointed administrators, one of whom hasn't. even the one that has appointed administrators is still working with the developer to deliver the project, because they understand that the developer is the best person to deliver that project for maximum profit and to get everyone out of it. The other lender hasn't even appointed administrators because from their perspective, they know that if they appoint administrators, it gets messy, it gets difficult. They just want to work with the developer to get it over the line. They are really, really sympathetic to his situation. And we've spoken about the deal previously, and it's one that we kind of jumped on to start the day after drawdown one before we did Ed's deal. It was kind of the day after drawdown deal that we did, but it went south so quickly that it couldn't be a podcast, unfortunately. So yeah, you've got to make sure that no matter what happens, you've got a lender that backs you, that understands, that is supportive, that isn't just going to appoint administrators and rip the houses from underneath you. If they do appoint administrators, you want to make sure they're working with you, because all that happens is as soon as they appoint administrators, it just ramps all of the interest fees up and all of the profit goes. And it goes to a third party who has absolutely no desire to do what's best for that property. So without a shadow of a doubt, I would say get a lender who's good. And that's why that's one of the biggest myths, is that you always need to focus on the rate. Well, it's not at all. One of the other myths I want to talk about is that by signing a PG, you're going to lose your house. So a lot of people say, well, I'm not signing a PG because I'll lose my house. Well, a lot of specific things have to happen for a PG to be called in. So, for instance, I've just spoken about that development deal there where one of the directors has run off with money. Two of the deals have gone into default, one's gone into administration, but no one has called in a PG, because a lot of the time what happens on development deals is because the funds are drawn down in arrears, what you'll tend to find is that you're ahead of the lender most of the time. So the lender you'll have always spent out more than what the lender's given you because it's in arrears. So you're always in a position where if it does hit the fan, you can kind of go, right, okay, well, we've got a little bit of a buffer here if something goes wrong. So in order for the PG to be called in, the lender has to lose money. So that means that they have to repossess the property, sell the property for a loss, and that loss has to be significant enough for them to then call in the PG. Because if a lender loses 10, 15 grand, they're not going to be that bothered about calling in a PG. If they lose 150 grand, they're probably going to call in the PG. But for them to lose 150 grand, that means that they have to sell the property for a loss big enough for them to lose 150 grand off their loan. So, for example, if the property at the point of repossession is worth £1 million, and let's say they've got debt of 500 grand on that property, which I don't think is too far-fetched, or even 750. If they sell that property for less than 750, one, they're going to have to explain why. Two, they're actually then going to be in a position where potentially there's some buffer there with interest and things like that as well, because of that 750, a good chunk of that is going to be interest and fees. So there may be some buffer there as well. But the big thing, they're going to have to explain why they've sold it for less than 750. They've got to show that they've sold it for true market value and everything else. And if it's up for £1 million, even a fire sale, you wouldn't think that you'd lose over 250 grand. So yeah, that's the only way the PG would be called in, is essentially if they sold it for a massive loss past that. So signing a PG doesn't mean you're going to instantaneously lose your house. There's a lot of steps that have to be gone through in order for that to even be a thing. The last one I want to talk about in terms of myths that we kind of want to go through, well, there's probably two actually that I'll go through. So one's very quick, and that's that lenders only lend against purchase price. Not true at all. They will lend against market value, but it's only bridging lenders as opposed to buy-to-lets or commercial mortgages. So that's kind of a nice, quick, easy one. And then the last one that I want to sort of touch on, and we'll do a few more of these next week as well when I'm not sat in a car. The last one I want to touch on is talking about you having to have experience in order for development lenders to look at you. And we've gone over this quite a few times on the podcast previously. We work with a lot of first-time developers. I would say easily 75-80% of the clients that we deal with are first-time developers who've never developed before. And some of them, I would say of that 75-80%, probably 50% of those have never been in property at all previously. So some of the guys we deal with, they've maybe been contractors, they've maybe worked for other people, they've maybe done plumbing, electrician, maybe they've been project managers, that kind of thing. But a lot of the people we deal with have never been in property at all. So I would say getting a good team around you is more significant than anything else when it comes to property. So development lenders, they look at the team around you. You're not going to be on site doing the works. Chances are you're going to have a main contractor, a project manager, everything else. So chances are they're going to want to look at that team that's around you and base their lending off that. But we've done lots of episodes about that previously. I just kind of wanted to touch on that as a final segment of this podcast, just to sort of say, look, even if you are completely new to property, there are still going to be options for you. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. Apologies, it's so kind of impromptu at the moment. I'm literally planning for my birthday tomorrow as well. So I kind of wanted to get it out and be like, look, here's a podcast and sort of deal with it. So yeah, I'm the ripe old age of 32 tomorrow. The brokerage actually has now been going for 8 years. So that's part of kind of all of this as well, is that, yeah, I mean, 8 years of the brokerage now, which, yeah, we'll try and do a big celebration for that, I think. The podcast has been going for 8 years as well. Over 8 years, actually. Gosh, yeah, that's some time that it's been going, actually. So, yeah, 8 years in January just gone, so 8.5 years now that this podcast has been on the sound waves, which is quite scary. But hopefully you're still enjoying the content and finding it helpful. We'll do a few more myths next week. We'll bust a few more, maybe more focused around bridging finance and maybe some more around mortgages as well. But keep your questions coming. It's great to see whenever we release a podcast. It's really nice to get DMs and things like that from people who say, oh, I've listened to the podcast. I found that really helpful. That's helped me with this. But actually, could you cover this? And it really helps us, because I'm lazy. I don't want to be sitting creating shed loads of content. So people giving me questions kind of gives me the lazy person's route to content. So it's quite handy in that sense. So yeah, keep the DMs coming, keep the emails coming, keep the phone calls coming. It really does make all of this worth it. And yeah, hopefully you found this helpful, and I will catch you on the next one.